For the night is dark and full of terrors.
The night is dark and full of terrors.
In the ancient books it's written that a warrior will draw a burning sword from the fire. And that sword shall be Lightbringer.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. With Halloween coming up, I wanted to do a video on one of the scariest places in the A Song of Ice and Fire world. And for this one, we must leave Westeros and cross the narrow sea to Essos. But we're not going to be in familiar spots that we know from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, like Braavos, Pentos, Volantis, or Old Valyria, which is a frightening place in its own right. It's much further east, beyond Yunkai, Marine, and the other cities around Slaver's Bay. We must cross the entire length of the Dothraki Sea until we get to the ominously named Bone Mountains. We don't stop here, but cross over them and through the Great Sand Sea and the plains of Yagas Nahai. The Yagas Nahai are like the Dothraki, who roam to the west of the Bone Mountains. They're nomadic, warlike people that ride zorses. Yes, zorses, not horses. But they're much smaller people than the Dothraki, and they have the custom of binding the heads of their newborns, which causes their pointed skulls. We move on from here just a little further and stop off at the Five Forts, which sits just below the Bleeding Sea. These blood-red waters sit aptly before dangerous and mysterious lands that stretch to the Grey Waste. Here's the description from the World of Ice and Fire. Of the land that lies beyond the Five Forts, we know even less. Legends and lies and travelers' tales are all that ever reach us of these far places. We hear of cities where the men soar like eagles on leathern wings, of towns made of bones, of a race of bloodless men who dwell between the deep valley called the Dry Deep and the mountains. Whispers reach us of the Grey Waste and its cannibal sands, and of the shrikes who live there, half-human creatures with green-scaled skin and venomous bites. Are these truly lizard men, or more likely men clad in the skins of lizards? Or are they no more than fables, the grumpkins and snarks of the eastern desert? And even the shrikes supposedly live in terror of Kadath in the Grey Waste, a city to be older than time, where unspeakable rites are performed to slake the hunger of mad gods. What we have here in Essos has parallels to the wall in the Night's Watch in Westeros. Here, it's in the easternmost area of the continent. In Westeros, the wall is to the extreme north. It's 700 feet tall. The Five Forts are even larger, reaching up to 1,000 feet. This wall is made of fused black stone that has led some to believe that the Valyrians were responsible for creating it, but it predates the rise of Old Valyria. Each fort can house 10,000 men. The wall, manned by the Night's Watch in Westeros, has 19 castles, but only 3 were manned by the time of the events of Game of Thrones: Eastwatch by the Sea, Shadow Tower, and of course, Castle Black. The wall was built to protect the 7 kingdoms. The 5 forts are close to the Golden Empire of Yati, but they were built prior to its existence. What's interesting, too, is their strategic location sitting on the banks of the Bleeding Sea and then reaching on their eastern end to the Mountains of the Morn. Some have speculated that the people of Essos faced the long night in the same way as Westeros, and that the White Walkers and the army of the dead crossed the shivering sea to the next continent. But this seems impossible, considering the huge expanse there is between Westeros and Essos. And if they had made it as far south, to the natural bridge that existed, then called the Arm of Dorne, then at that point the entirety of Westeros would have been wiped out. So even if both continents speak of the Long Night and experienced it, the threats each faced were a different one. The World of Ice and Fire describes it this way. In the annals of the further east, it was the blood betrayal, as his usurpations are named, that ushered in the Age of Darkness, called the Long Night. Despairing of the evil that had been leashed on earth, the maiden Maid of Light turned her back upon the world, and the Lion of the Night came forth in his wrath to punish the wickedness of men. You can see the similarities here between the two continents where a force emerges to threaten the realms of men. And this is what I believe these 5 forts were made to protect them from, not simply the flesh-eaters of the cannibal sands or the lizard-like people, but a different kind of undead army. And it's very possible the center of the threat is Kadath, In the Grey Waste, a city everyone is afraid of. In the book, they said unspeakable sacrifices occurred here, which reminds you a bit of Craster sacrificing children. Incidentally, the Shrikes, who are just on the other side of the five forts, I don't believe are actually lizard like people, but could be very similar to the wildlings beyond the wall, and they simply have been wearing the skins of lizards, as was suggested in the book. There is one other interesting connection between the lore of both the Lion of the Night and the others. It was here that the legend of Azor Ahai originated, the same one Melisandre speaks of, and originally believed Stannis to be the reincarnation of. Melisandre is also from Asshai, which is south of the Yiti Empire and the Five Forts area. In the world of Ice and Fire, the legend is explained. Azor Ahai arose to give courage to the race of men and lead the virtuous into battle with his blazing sword Lightbringer, that the darkness was put to rout, and light and love returned once more to the world. So there are many parallels between the two threats and even some interconnectivity when it comes to Azor Ahai. I would love to see them one day make a film about the threat they faced in Essos. There's so much they could do with it. The mystery gives them wide parameters, and the potential connection to the A Song of Ice and Fire story with Azor Ahai would be fascinating too. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. And if you're interested in more on A Song of Ice and Fire and House of the Dragon, listen to Caraxes and subscribe. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you soon.